The shiny, soft-lined doors of a fancy place called Verite opened very quietly, like a secret. It was the kind of quiet saved for kings and very important people. Inside, everything sparkled. There was lots of glass and gold. Everyone looked like they were expecting something special to happen. Pretty lights from big crystal lamps made the room glow like honey. Shadows stretched long and smooth across white tablecloths. People were whispering as they talked. Even the air smelled fancy, like old wine, yummy butter, and money. Then something changed. Keanu Reeves walked in first. He didn't look flashy. He wore a soft gray jacket, an old black t-shirt, and jeans that looked comfy, not fancy. He had a plain brown bag over his shoulder. His boots looked old but clean. He didn't need to shout or dress loud. People knew who he was anyway. Behind him came Denzel Washington. He had a quiet, strong way about him. He wore a neat navy blue suit and a white shirt with the top button open. He looked calm and proud. But under the golden lights, what people really noticed wasn't his clothes. It was his skin. Nobody said anything, but the feeling in the room changed. Some people stared a little longer. A man at the bar lowered his drink and looked harder. Near the front, Tessa, a server in a fancy black dress with her name tag shining, stood a little straighter. She was helping a couple sit down, but when she saw the two men, she looked down quickly. She didn't see any designer brands on them. They didn't say a name for a reservation. Just two men. One too casual. One too black. She turned to them and smiled a practiced smile. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said politely but with a little test in her voice. "Do you have a reservation?" Keanu nodded. "We were hoping to eat without one, if that's okay." Tessa's smile twitched a little. "This is Verite," she said, like that should explain everything. "We're fully booked tonight. It's very exclusive." Denzel gave her a kind, small smile. "We understand. If there's even a little spot somewhere, we'll take it." The way he said it, calm not pushy, made her feel weird. "I'm a little annoyed." She should have said no. But something about the way they didn't act upset made her more bothered. "This way," she finally said. She turned quickly and walked past tables filled with fancy people. Women with shiny pearls, men sipping wine like it made them important. They walked past a piano playing soft jazz music and into the very back, near the kitchen doors. She showed them a table near some stacked chairs and a fire extinguisher. It was far from the pretty lights. "It's more private here," she said, putting down the menus without much care. Keanu pulled out a chair for Denzel and sat down quietly. Tessa waited. She thought they might complain about the table. But they didn't. That made her feel even stranger. People kept talking, but something was different now. As Tessa walked away, her heels clicked loudly like little angry words. But in the dark corner of the restaurant, where the fancy lights didn't reach, Keanu and Denzel just sat quietly. Two men who had learned how to stay calm in places that didn't want them. Denzel looked around. The table they were given was squished next to a stack of baby chairs and the fire extinguisher. Every few minutes, someone came out of the kitchen, the door swinging, bringing the smell of oil and the loud voice of the chef. "I don't think they want us here," Denzel said quietly, like the beginning of a story. He looked across the table and there was a little smile in his eyes. Keanu smiled back just a little. "They usually don't." From a nearby table, people laughed, but not in a nice way. A lady in a backless dress leaned close to the man next to her, hiding behind her fancy drink. The man in a tight navy suit whispered something mean. "They must have just walked in off the street. One looks like he fixes motorcycles. The other? Probably his agent." Denzel heard it. He always did. But he didn't move. He had learned how to sit still when people judged you, not with mean words but with small things. Where you sit. How they speak to you. Quiet laughs pretending to be polite. "I came here to eat," he said, slowly unfolding his napkin. "Let's see what kind of dinner comes with this kind of silence." Keanu leaned back and looked at the menu like it was a good book. He didn't care about the food or the service. He was there for something else. Something deeper. This weird, tense moment? He had expected it. But the room didn't expect them. Far across the room, a man in a gray suit was watching. His name was Elias Montgomery. He had helped build this place. And he was an old friend of Keanu's, from a time no one else in the room would guess. He saw everything. He watched as Tessa walked right past Keanu and Denzel without looking, heading to a table full of rich tech guys with sparkly jackets and empty eyes. Elias tapped his glass slowly. He didn't say anything yet. He wanted to see how long the game would go on. At the back, Denzel lifted his menu calmly. Keanu moved his chair a little. From the kitchen came a loud clang of pans. It broke the tension, but just for a second. Because tonight, the back of the room was about to become the center of everything. Tessa came back to their table, holding her little notepad. But this time her smile was thinner, sharper, a little mean. She didn't think they'd still be sitting there. Most people would have left after being shown that dark table. But not them. They were still calm, still polite. And they weren't in a hurry. She stopped beside them, standing straight like a soldier. "Have you decided?" she asked, "or should I tell you about the specials?" Keanu looked up and folded his menu nicely. "We're ready." Before she could say anything else, Denzel looked at her kindly but firmly. "I'll start with the osso buco," he said, "and a glass of your house Bordeaux." Tessa froze. It wasn't because she didn't understand. She was thinking, judging. She looked at her notepad, then at Denzel again. "Just so you know," she said quietly, but loud enough for others to hear, "that wine is $1,200 a bottle. We do have a Milo you can get by the glass if you prefer." Denzel didn't blink. "I asked for Bordeaux." Tessa's mouth twitched a little. "Of course," she said, writing it down with a big showy movement. Then she looked at Keanu, hoping he would ask for something cheaper. "And for you, sir?" Keanu smiled softly. "Same." Her mouth tightened. "Very well." As she walked away, someone at a table nearby said loudly, but pretending to whisper, "Daryl's got expensive taste tonight," and laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. Others joined in. Sure. Denzel's eyes didn't move, but his hand held his napkin tighter. Keanu noticed. He said nothing. He didn't have to. The air between them stayed calm and still. Across the room, Elias watched. His face was tight now. He knew that laugh. He knew what it meant. He knew Tessa had made a mistake, a big one, and she wouldn't know how to fix it. At the bar, a young server named Noah turned to a coworker. "Why is she always like this when someone like him comes in?" he asked softly. The other server shrugged. "Management doesn't care. So she doesn't care." Noah looked toward the back again. Denzel picked up his water glass and took a sip, calm like always. But Noah could tell, this wasn't about wine. It wasn't about having a reservation. It was about respect. About who gets to feel important. And tonight, that idea was about to change. Keanu and Denzel were sitting at the back table in a fancy restaurant, watching the world around them. They weren't paying attention to the soft music drifting through the room or the clinking of expensive dishes. The music, played by a young pianist in a sleek black suit, filled the air like a calm breeze, but it wasn't what caught their attention. The pianist's focus was distant, as if he knew his music wasn't the center of attention, just the background noise to all the whispering and laughter happening around the room. The room was full of people who looked important, dressed in sharp suits and sparkling dresses, but Keanu and Denzel weren't interested in any of that. Keanu was sitting back in his chair, one arm casually draped over the backrest. His eyes moved slowly, taking in every detail around him. He noticed the way the restaurant staff moved, how their footsteps were quick but careful, as if they were trying to avoid making a mistake. He watched the way some diners wouldn't make eye contact with others, as if trying to avoid being seen. Keanu's gaze moved over the group of hedge fund men sitting in a booth nearby. They were laughing loudly at Tessa's jokes, clearly trying to show off to everyone around them. But Keanu wasn't bothered by it. He was simply watching, observing, and taking everything in. There was a quiet strength in the way he looked at things, as if he knew what was happening without needing to react to it. Denzel, sitting next to him, was perfectly still. He didn't move much except for occasionally swirling the water in his glass. His stillness was calm, yet it had a kind of power to it, like there was something burning inside him that he had learned to keep quiet, hidden away until it needed to be set free. There was something elegant about Denzel's calmness. He wasn't trying to draw attention to himself, yet people couldn't help but notice him. Elias Montgomery, an older man sitting at the bar, had noticed them too. He wasn't distracted by the laughter or the conversations around him. His sharp eyes, hidden beneath silver eyebrows, were focused on Keanu and Denzel. He wasn't surprised to see them there. Elias knew this world. He had helped fund places like this, restaurants that prided themselves on being exclusive and elite. He had watched these places grow and flourish, built on a reputation that was carefully polished, sometimes hiding the rot growing inside. Elias leaned toward Noah, the young server standing nearby. "Do you know who that man is?" he asked, pointing toward Keanu. Noah glanced over and replied, "Keanu Reeves." Elias nodded, then asked, "And the other one?" Noah took a moment before responding, "That's Denzel Washington." The name Denzel Washington struck Noah like a whisper across glass. His eyes widened a little as he realized who he was looking at. The actor? He asked. Elias smiled faintly. Yes, but he's also the man who helped create the arts program this restaurant brags about in its press releases, he added, making sure Noah understood the weight of who was sitting at the back table. Noah turned his head slowly, looking back at the men with new respect. Now the table in the back didn't seem like a mistake. It felt like a test. They weren't just ordinary people, they were Keanu Reeves and Denzel Washington, men who had made a real difference in the world. At that moment, Tessa, the server, walked by without noticing them. She was busy with another table, serving champagne to people who seemed to belong to the world of money and fame. She was trying to impress them, make sure they felt important. But when she came back to the back table with the food, she didn't seem to treat Keanu and Denzel with the same respect. She placed Denzel's plate down roughly. "The asabuco," she said, setting it down with a little more force than necessary. Then she put Keanu's Wagyu steak in front of him with a little more care, but not much. It was clear she was focused on the people who seemed to have the most power in the room, not on the ones who truly deserved respect. Tessa wasn't finished yet. She leaned down slightly toward Denzel as if sharing a secret. "That bottle you asked for? It's going to be added to your bill, no discount," she said with a tone that made it clear she was trying to remind him of his place. Denzel looked up at her with a calm smile. "I wouldn't dream of asking for one," he said softly. But Tessa wasn't done showing off. She stood up straighter and said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "We've had guests get surprised before, especially when it's their first time here." From across the room, a woman in diamonds chuckled at Tessa's words. It was the kind of laugh that made it clear she thought she was part of the in-crowd. Keanu didn't flinch. He simply set his fork down, and for a brief moment, the restaurant became very still. He stood up slowly, making sure his movements were controlled and calm. He didn't slam his chair back. He didn't shout. He didn't even scowl. He just stood up, and suddenly all the attention shifted to him. The laughter stopped. Tessa froze, and the pianist faltered for a single note. The room, full of chatter and laughter, suddenly felt like it was holding its breath. Keanu's eyes moved across the room, but there was no anger or accusation in his gaze. It was simply a calm presence, unmistakably present in the room. From the bar, Elias stood up too. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor as he made his way toward the back table. When he reached Denzel and Keanu, he extended his hand toward Denzel. "Mr. Washington," he said warmly, "it's an honor. I regret we haven't spoken sooner." Then Elias turned to Keanu. "Mr. Reeves, always a pleasure," he said, his voice respectful. At that moment, the entire room seemed to freeze. People at the bar whispered, "Wait, that's Denzel Washington?" Keanu gave a small smile, but it was clear he wasn't trying to make a big deal out of it. "We were just trying to enjoy dinner," he said softly. Elias turned to Tessa, whose face had gone pale. Her posture was stiff, and the pad she had been holding in her hand was now trembling. Elias's voice grew clearer and louder as he spoke to the entire restaurant. "The mistake tonight," he said, "wasn't about who walked in. It's about who assumed they didn't belong." The room was silent. The tension in the air was thick. It was like the whole restaurant had just realized they had been wrong. Elias continued, his voice rising slightly to make sure everyone could hear him. "I'm sure many of you recognize Keanu Reeves. But what most of you don't know is that Mr. Reeves is not just a guest of this restaurant. He's one of its founding patrons and part owner." A wave of shock passed through the room. People couldn't believe it. Keanu remained calm, nodding slightly, acknowledging the surprise without drawing attention to it. His eyes, however, remained fixed on Tessa, who was now frozen in place. Elias wasn't finished yet. "And this gentleman," he said, gesturing to Denzel, "is not just an award-winning actor. He's also a national arts philanthropist. Mr. Washington is the architect behind the Future Light Initiative, the very arts program we boast about in our marketing brochures." A woman sitting at the next table gasped. People at the bar looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. They were all stunned. Tessa stood there, mouth slightly open, wanting to explain but finding no words. She was caught in the web of her own arrogance. Denzel, who had been so quiet and graceful through all of this, finally spoke. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly to Elias. Elias smiled faintly. "No," he said. "But someone had to." Then Elias turned to the rest of the restaurant, his voice firm but calm. "Let this be a reminder," he said, "that a person's dignity has nothing to do with their shoes, their skin color, or whether or not they wear a Rolex on their wrist." The silence in the room was heavy, like everyone was realizing something they hadn't understood before. Then, slowly, a few people at the bar began to clap. It wasn't loud or over the top, but it was respectful. Soon, others joined in until a soft but steady applause filled the room. It wasn't a celebration. It was an apology. Keanu stood up straight, his voice calm but strong. Sometimes, he said, the lesson isn't in who you recognize. It's in who you choose to ignore. The words hung in the air and Tessa lowered her head, her shoulders slumping. Keanu looked at Noah, the young server who had been quietly watching the whole thing. They exchanged a brief nod, a simple gesture of respect between them. As the applause faded and the tension lifted, Elias stepped back. The room felt different now. The people who had once seen themselves as the most important in the room now understood that they had been wrong. The back table, once treated like it didn't belong, had become the heart of the evening. The applause faded slowly, like a tide pulling back from the shore. But the silence that followed was thick, not empty but full of realization. The restaurant, once a place of performance and illusion, had now seen the truth. And everyone, whether they wanted to admit it or not, felt it. The masks had slipped, and the reality of who mattered was clear. Keanu Reeves stood next to a table that no one had wanted before. Now everyone was looking at it. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His calm voice made everyone listen more than if he had yelled. "I didn't come here tonight to teach anyone a lesson," Keanu said. His hands were resting at his sides. "I came to eat dinner with a friend. But it looks like this room had other plans." He looked around. He wasn't mad. But he looked at people in a way that asked, "What do you believe in when no one is watching?" Denzel was sitting next to him. He was quiet and watching. He didn't need to speak to show his strength. "When we came into this restaurant," Keanu said, "no one welcomed us. No one asked what we wanted to eat. Instead, they looked at us and judged us." People near the front of the room moved around in their seats. They didn't want to meet his eyes. "And that's not just wrong for me," Keanu said. "It's wrong for anyone who walks in here. Not dressed in fancy clothes but still full of dignity." He looked at Tessa, who was standing near the bar now. Her arms were crossed tightly, and her eyes looked shiny and sad. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything. Keanu spoke gently. "People shouldn't need to be famous to get respect. It shouldn't take a big problem or someone yelling. It should take nothing. Because every person, no matter what they wear or how they look, should be treated kindly." Someone near the bar let out a breath. The room didn't clap, but everyone was quiet in a way that showed they heard him. At the back, Noah, the young waiter, stood a little taller. He looked around, hopeful for the first time that night. Denzel saw him and gave a tiny nod. Then Keanu looked at the restaurant manager. The manager had come up next to Tessa. He looked upset and sorry. He nodded slowly and looked down. Keanu stepped back a little. His voice was softer now. "We all make mistakes. But our mistakes don't make us who we are. What we do next does. Do we try to be better or do we give up?" He picked up his jacket and folded it over his arm. "I'm not mad," Keanu said. "I'm just tired of seeing this happen again and again. Maybe tonight it stops one more time sooner." He looked at Denzel and asked, "You ready?" Denzel stood up, fixed his jacket and said, "Let's go." As they walked to the door, the room stayed quiet, not because they didn't care but because they were thinking deeply. Just then the restaurant manager moved. "Mr. Reeves," he called out, his voice shaking, "please, can we talk for a moment?" Keanu stopped. Denzel turned slightly, his face calm but serious. Everyone held their breath. The manager walked forward, past the surprised people, past Tessa, who was now hiding a little behind the hostess stand. Her eyes were wide and still. "I want to say sorry," the manager said. He tried to keep his voice calm. "This isn't who we are." Keanu looked at him, still calm but firm. "It is who you are," he said. "You just got caught tonight." He didn't say it to be mean, it was just the truth. The manager looked hurt, but Keanu didn't try to punish him. That wasn't his way. He looked at Tessa. "Do you know the worst part?" he asked quietly. "You thought my clothes told you who I was. But you never asked yourself, who are you becoming?" Tessa's face dropped. She whispered, "I didn't mean to." "I know," Denzel said, stepping forward. His voice was low and strong. "You didn't mean to make it about race or money or power. You didn't mean to make anyone feel small. But the truth is, what you meant doesn't erase what you did." He let that thought sit in the air. "And people like us who go through this again and again, we're always the ones who are told to just deal with it. To smile, to move on. But not tonight." The manager looked down. He had nothing to say back. Denzel turned to Noah, the young waiter, who had come closer but didn't know if he should say something. Denzel looked at him and nodded. "You're the only one who acted like you saw us," he said. Noah swallowed. I didn't know what to say." You don't need to say anything, Denzel said kindly. You just need to be brave. And you were. Noah looked surprised, happy, and touched. For a moment, his heart felt warm, like someone had lit a little candle inside it. Denzel took out a business card from his jacket and gave it to Noah. He didn't make a big deal out of it. If you ever want to work somewhere that makes you feel proud instead of ashamed, he said, call me. Noah looked at the card. His hands shook a little. His eyes filled with tears. And in that moment, more than all the speeches, something really changed. Keanu put a hand on Denzel's shoulder. Are we good? He asked. We're good, Denzel said. They walked out past the velvet curtains and all the quiet people. But inside the restaurant called Verite, something had changed. Not loudly, but enough. Behind the bar, Tessa sat down slowly. Her strong, confident look was gone. Her black uniform felt more like a costume now. She looked like she didn't know who she was anymore. She played with her hands, trying to fix something that wasn't there. She had thought she was classy, professional, and good at her job. But tonight showed her someone else. Someone she didn't like. The person she became when no one important was watching. Across the room, Noah stood still, holding the card with Denzel's name and the Future Light Initiative on it. He read it once, then again. Then he put it safely in his pocket, like a tiny seed that could grow into something better one day. Near the piano, Elias Montgomery sat down again. But not to eat. He just looked around the place he helped build. Now he didn't see a fancy, classy place. He saw a stage that had confused looking good with being good. And in the middle of it all was the table. The empty one. 2 napkins folded. 2 glasses half full. A quiet lesson written in silence. The real test of who you are isn't about being rich or famous. It's about how you treat people when you think they can't help you. Keanu and Denzel didn't get mad. They showed kindness, calm, and strength. And they reminded everyone that being quiet doesn't mean doing nothing, and that sometimes the strongest voice is the one that stays kind. If you like this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures, mysteries, and unforgettable moments. Your support keeps these stories alive and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.